Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Infrastructure Services Committee meeting of April the 9th, 2020, coming to you from the territories of the Squamish and Sechelt First Nations. This morning, we have on our agenda, well, do we have a motion to adopt the agenda? Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor of the agenda? Good, that passes. Thank you very much. So the first item on our agenda is a delegation from the Elphinstone Community Association. I'm going to turn it over to Herman. Sorry.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thank you. And I'd like to thank the committee to listen to Colleen, Clark, and myself and give us the opportunity to present our petition today. So just as an introduction, both Colleen and myself are part of the Reed Road Forest Working Group. And we have been working with the umbrella of the Elphinstone Community Association to protect Reed Road Forest. I have a few slides so that I'd like to present. And now we're going to see the tests of my skills here. So I need to share my screen with you. And then how do I do that? Share, okay. So it may all crash, but and here we are. See? So I hope you can see this. I can't. God. Okay, no, here. Okay, so we talked about the forest before. I just want to highlight a few points. You can read the rest yourself. So Reed Road Forest is the only remaining forest that's intact in Area E. It is very easy accessible to people, and very important, it's at the urban forest interface. It's very close to Gibson's. It offers easy access for people. The forest regenerated naturally after a big fire in 1906. So by all purposes, it really needs to be regarded as an old-growth forest. It has mixed plants and so on, has well-established ecosystem, abundant wildlife, and many of the trees are over 100 years old. Importantly, it has lots of streams that cross the area. So they're important hydrologically for wells, downstream farms, as well as the Gibson's Aquifer, which is located in this area here. And actually, we just live south of Reed Road Forest, right adjacent to it. It's noticeable how many more people are visiting Reed Road and Reed Road Forest now with this COVID pandemic. The forest has actually historically not been part of the BCTS timber sales area. It's been labeled the Old Gibson's Watershed Reserve, and an official community plan had highlighted this as a future park. And the Elphinstone Community Association has consistently opposed logging of Reed Road Forest ever since this came up in 2013. Elphinstone Logging Focus, ELF, has actually commissioned a registered professional biologist and forester, Alan Banner, to look at the forest to basically study its value and whether it supports red and blue listed ecological communities. And that's clearly the case. It's a healthy forest that supports lots of rare species, including actually red-legged frogs. And it'd be a real pity to lose this. This is a map from 2010 from BC Timber Sales, a screenshot that shows that clearly the timber sales area at the time was north of lot 1313, which is below here. And I want to highlight this little corner here. That's a privately held lot actually up here. There is not much there. Now, if we fast forward to 2020, the private held lot is here. So 1313 is down here. So BCTS now basically just includes the lot 1313 in an area of enhanced public engagement we're not going to talk about that today. It's a different chapter. But we're basically talking about this piece of forest here that should be basically not going up for sale. So what are we requesting of the board? We're asking the board, the SRD, the rights to Minister Donaldson to ask that the minister withdraw the land of 1313 from the BCTS timber supply area so we can keep the forest for conservation purposes. So just remember, we're actually just asking to put the forest back where it was a few years ago. Long-term goal is preservation of the forest as a conservation area and teaching forest. What is our plan for the future? Actually maintain the forest in its present state, so it's not going to cost money. So we're just leave it as it is. Some of us locally would like to raise some limited money so we can develop it as a educational forest, make the trails better. There's about 2 hours of trails in the forest already now, and make them better, have signs, and have interpretation signs. And management oversight, so basically the people that are involved now, I think are happy to continue to be involved under the umbrella of the Elphinstone Community Association and find potential partnerships with First Nations, environmental, recreational groups, as well as educational groups. The last slide here is just from 2 years ago. There's a strong support in the whole community to really protect this forest. So with this, I'd like to end my show, and I really hope I managed to come back online here. So what am I do here? Stop share. Okay. So I hope that worked.
That was excellent. Thank you very much, Herman, for a great presentation and good technical capability there. Do we have any questions from anybody on the board? Director Hiltz.
Thanks for your presentation, Herman. So before 2010, this block was not in the BCTS supply area. So do you have any documentation on how that decision was made to go from, is there in your research?
That's a really good question. So basically, when we purchased our house 2008, it clearly was watershed reserve and a potential park and so on. And the first time I've seen 1313 appearing in BCTS maps was actually when they proposed to log it, which came out of the blue for every resident here. And we've been trying to find out how that ever happened. I've never been given a question. I actually asked Ross from ELF about that, and he told me they asked the same question to ELF, to BCTS as well. And the answer from BCTS was, well, we just incorporated in our area, and that's what we do all the time. So there was no minister, or there was no, as far as I know. So, for instance, the SRD was never asked about this. But I don't have any detail, but nobody has been saying, yes, there is a ministerial decree or anything like that. I don't think that exists.
Okay, any further questions or follow-up? Director Hiltz, did you have a follow-up, or are you done? Okay, Director Lee.
I was just wondering why the trees are, I was wondering why the trees are 100 years old. Old growth is generally, I believe, on the coast, 250 years old is the definition. And you mentioned that these trees were 100 years old. I was just wondering if you knew why there wasn't the 250-year-old trees in there.
The whole area here got destroyed in a big fire in 1906. So that, and the forest naturally regenerated after that. And when you're walking in the forest, you can see really tall, straight trees. I mean, that's why BCTS wants it. And most of the trees are at least 100 years old. As far as I understand, that the definition of old growth forest is really hard to pin down what age number you put on it. So we can also label it an emerging old growth forest if that suits the purpose better. But basically what it is mixed. It's right now mostly Douglas fir. It has some hemlock, some cedar in it, and there's really healthy undergrowth as well. Up to 2 meter tall huckleberry bushes and so on. So it's and it was not human design. There was very limited hand logging in this forest before the fire, and there was absolutely no logging after it burnt down.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any further hands. Director Ties.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to see if maybe Herman or Colleen could fill us in on some of the hydrological issues that are going on in that area and what their experience has been. I'm just curious as to how logging that would affect them and as well as the community around there.
Okay. So maybe I'll can talk about the eastern section of the hydrological area, and Colleen possibly want to add something onto the western area where actually Colleen lives below Reed Road Forest on the western section, and we are right at the southeastern corner. So basically, there are several creeks that come through the forest, and two of those creeks actually run through our property. One of the main issues has been Walker Creek, that has been diverted some 30 years ago. Now, Walker Creek runs in the middle of the property of the forest. So I just see whether. Okay, is it possible for me to share the screen again so I can show you those streams? Is that okay? Okay, so do here. Okay, and okay, so you should see now the map here from BCTS. And maybe I'll do this here as well. Is it okay? So it should be coming now. Okay. So Walker Creek runs through the forest like this here. And it has been diverted along Reed Road Forest and coming along here. So this is where we live actually. And the creek now merges with two other creeks that come out from the forest. There's a Shirley Creek, and this one has no name. And all those creeks run then through the corner of our property here. And the creeks are wrong here. Then they go through the southern, so Conway property, Jorgensen property here. And actually here is Russell Road. And this road here washed out twice in, I think, 2014 and 2018. And if this is being logged with Walker Creek draining this area here and increasing the water here, it probably will wash out more. And possibly also the Walker Creek that normally should go down here actually would just run across Reed Road in its old bed. And then people down here would be in real trouble. Okay, so I'll go back to end the share thing here. Okay, so I didn't hope that has answered your question.
Colleen, did you have anything to add?
Sorry for sticking my hand in all your faces. So on my side, there has been a creek diversion by my neighbor, who in turn apparently diverted the creek towards his place and caused flooding at Laura Christmas's farm down on the highway, to the point that she was in 3 feet of water. So she has to dig ditches and she has to have piping put in. But a minor diversion as that has caused huge ramifications for her property at the bottom. I do know that when they logged 1312, there were some properties on Highland that their wells happened to go dry. Not that summer, but about 2 summers later. They have since had to redig their wells to get their water back. It was at a deeper level. There is a property above us that is sitting in an avular, like a debris avula. And when they built 4 years ago, they built in the fall and didn't realize that they were building on a creek. So they have massive piping underneath their home. And there's a pond that goes to the side of them and that drains down into the neighbor below. So any water that's coming down, if they pick a weed above us, we feel the ramifications.
I'm not hearing Colleen. Is it me?
What, you can't hear me?
I can hear her fine.
Hear you.
So it's the slope that we're in has a lot of water running underneath it. And anything that happens, any small thing that happens affects many, many people. We're all in a line of using the same water source. The people above us have a well. They also have a artesian well that's been capped. They had some massive water problems at first, but now that's been solved. There was a BCTS employee up on District Lot 1313 on Easter Monday. They were looking to map streams. They did mention to this person that saw them that they will be logging further up 1313 into just above 1312, but they will also be doing a lot of selective logging as far down as almost to Herman's Place. So that's going to have massive ramifications for all of us. There is a water issue. There's no question. There's also too in our particular area is a wind factor. We have a lot of weather patterns that people right next door in Roberts Creek don't even have. So we have snow belts, and the snow belt goes right down to Venture Way. My husband's been monitoring this for a while, and there is a significant amount of wind that flows over from Howe Sound, and that's our weather pattern. And I don't think that's being addressed either. But I don't like the way the BCTS is operating as far as sneaking in and lying. I think that's unfair to us. I think we should all be involved, and we should know where these streams are flowing, who it's going to affect, what's happened to 1312 as a result of their logging. This all is part and parcel. We're built on a watershed, and something should be done about this with BCTS. They have to address it, and they have to address the public. And that's it. Done.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions of the delegation? I'm not going to speak to this at this time. Obviously, it's my area, Area E, but I'm going to have a fair bit about this will be on our agenda next week on the board agenda. So I will have more to say about this. All right, I'll just mention that this lot is anomalous in terms of the other areas that BCTS has been logging. It wasn't originally in their timber supply area. It has a history. It was a watershed reserve since the 1940s, and it's directly adjacent to residential properties in an area that's already notorious for overland flooding. So I think that the case to log this is very poor. Let's just put it that way. If we see no further comments, I'm going to move on in our agenda. Thank you very much, Herman and Colleen, for attending. Good presentation.
So thank you. So we can leave now.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, and goodbye, everyone, and thanks for listening to us.
Thank you. Pretty good, folks. That was our first completely Zoom delegation. So, we now have reports. Can I see a motion to receive all the reports? Moved and seconded. All in favor? Reports are received. Next one is General Manager, Infrastructure Services on the impacts of COVID on Infrastructure Services Department work plan. Over to you, Remco.
Good morning, everybody. I wanted to present this report as it highlights some impacts COVID-19 pandemic is having on the Infrastructure Services Department work plan. They primarily relate on the utility services side to activities that require staff to be in close contact with each other, or public participation events. And the solid waste side, also some outreach events, and then transit and fleet, all planning related activities related to potential service expansions. And that's because of the redeployment of BC Transit staff. And I'm more than happy to take any questions you might have on this report or the departmental response to COVID in general.
Do we have any questions from directors? Director Pratt? No?
Yes. A couple of things, just comments. It's such a shame to, when people are home, to be having to delay the composter and any of these waste reduction initiatives, because we have people that are at home and can actually concentrate on reducing their waste at home while they're at home. I understand the staff interfacing with our public, but just as a comment, it's a shame that we can't take advantage of people being at home to properly set up their composting. And a question regarding BC Transit. Have they put forward, and maybe this will also come up with when we have the discussion on our agreement with them, have they indicated that they have any kind of revitalization plan for transit moving forward?
I can talk about it later more. In terms of their planning, I was on a call with some of their staff yesterday, and they indicated that this year's expansion plans that they have on the docket for other systems for this year are all going to be postponed until 2021, because one of the reasons is they won't be able to provide any new buses because they are not manufactured at the moment. So that's one reason. And in terms of revitalization, it will really depend on how long this will go on and what the ridership will be at the end. And what the financial situations of all the operators and BC Transit itself will be at that point in time. There might be an increased demand for ridership or decreased ridership. I can talk about it later, but our current ridership is about 1/20 of what it normally is at this point in time. So it's really low. But we can talk about it indeed more when we talk about the AOA.
Okay, Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, thanks for the report. Interested in the significance of relying on the weather stations versus the manual snowpack, as the longitudinal data is with the snowpack. So the correlating between these two sources of data and the effect on predicting what the amount of water is available in the watershed, like for the future. So the significance of not being able to do that snowpack, and as I mentioned before in agenda review, the tetraheder and weather station is down. So what are the supplemental sources of of data in lieu of in-person snowpack information.
With your permission, I will answer that question when I do my water supply update presentation. I have some slides there that will include it, and this is included in those.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. Thank you for your report. I think as we all recognize, given this fast changing environment that we're in, this is, this is the impact today. And we don't know, given what the province is going to do, what BC Transit is going to do, what the federal government's going to do, and the progression of this COVID-19 in our communities. Next month, our situation could be totally different. So thank you for the update. We understand that it's on a fast shifting field that you're reporting from, and that, as I said, changes are happening daily. Just prior to us actually starting this meeting, there was an announcement. Councillor Toth, or Director Toth in this case, had sent out to us that the province has just made some announcements around taxes. So, it's changing daily, and it will continue to change for the next while. So thank you for being on top of where we're at and just keeping us informed. I appreciate it.
Good. Director Hiltz, your hand is still up. Are you? Okay. Any further questions? From seeing none, I think we will move forward to the next item, which is General Manager again, BC Transit Annual Operating Agreement. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair McMahon. Every year, BC Transit and the SRD enter into an agreement to establish the service hour, the cost, and funding for the transit service for BC Transit fiscal year, which is from April 1st to March 31st. This year, the board adopted or reviewed a draft AOA in January, and compared to that draft, the final AOA results in a budget decrease of about $92,000. If you, given the difference between the fiscal years of the SRD and the BC Transit, that results in a decrease of almost $74,000 for our fiscal year compared to the draft AOA as discussed in January, and which was currently included in our 2020 budget. Under normal circumstances, this would result in a surplus at the end of 2020. Due to the combination of all the measures taken in response to the SRDs, in SRD's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, it's currently not possible for staff to predict if there indeed could be a surplus at the end of the year for this function or not. And staff is more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. I have one that's probably a rhetorical question, but given that BC Transit serves municipalities and regional districts across the province, and we all have a different fiscal year than they do, have they ever considered changing their fiscal year so that it would make sense for us?
Thank you, Chair, for this question. I'm sure that they have considered it, but they are bound by the provincial fiscal year, which is April 1st.
Okay. Do we have any questions from board members? I don't see any questions. On page 9, do I see a motion? I see a motion, a seconder for the recommendations on page 9.
I think there were some questions, but...
Oh, beg pardon. Director Seegers, you're first on my list.
Thank you. So as their year end ends April 1st, this is reflecting their last year, or is that reflecting, we're looking at April 1st on?
Yes, correct.
So they actually put these together before all of this hit. And so on their end can't really give accurate numbers inside of this because they don't know where they're going. I mean, I saw the other day that they're appealing to the province for some money to actually keep running. Yeah, because they're running out of money as well. So how have they indicated anything like they're looking to revise these, or are they just going to go ahead with these and we figure out how it plays out later on and do an amendment? Like how would that actually work in this situation? Or do they even know?
Thank you for the question. They're figuring out how to make it happen as we speak, as we're all doing. No, this agreement is based on the pre-COVID schedule. Amendments will be made to this AOA, and we've done that more often to amend the AOA throughout the year. It's most likely that an AOA will be forthcoming in June or July for the board's consideration, an AOA amendment, given that we then have actual 3 months of most likely COVID data to confirm, and then we can make a prediction, okay, what would it be moving forward. In terms of an appeal to senior levels of government, TransLink in Vancouver was in the media the other day, which is unrelated to BC Transit. They're not connected to each other. The funding model is completely different. So the financial impact to BC Transit is not such as it is to TransLink, which is good for us. There is an appeal made together with all other transit operators in Canada to the federal government for support on the lost revenue side, because there's a lot of revenue that we're currently foregoing, in part due to the fact that we're not collecting it, as well as due to the fact that we just have a significant reduced ridership amount. And I just mentioned it's about our ridership is currently, as of late last week, about less than a tenth of that it normally is at this point in time.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Director Seegers? Okay, Director Hiltz?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, the question I have is, in terms of, I seem to remember that BC Transit was saying we're not going to do any service changes in the future in light of the uncertainty. So you were talking about the amendments, and we did a transit fare review. So I'm just trying to organize the timeline between that event and what happens with the AOA. And is anything, we talked about the adult monthly pass as one of the possible changes in the future. So do you know anything about how those pieces fit together in the next year and looking at the monthly pass changes in the future?
Thank you for the question. There will be no change in the introduction of the new the revised fare system, in part because it is actually a reduction in fares. So we didn't. There was no need to have further discussion on that with BC Transit. What they're not doing is actual service inspections where they're putting more buses on the road or introducing the routes. All those kind of initiatives are postponed. But the planning work might be starting up later this year, but as Director Seegers was referring to, everything can change on a daily basis. So we'll have to see if we can indeed start our planning work later this year or not. And maybe it's worthwhile to mention that one of the COVID measures that we've been discussing is a bus for healthcare workers. There was some delay with BC Transit and with VCH to bring everybody together and to figure out the details, but the service will start tomorrow at 5:30.
That's good to hear. Okay, do we have any further questions from directors? Would anybody care to entertain a motion Director Hilt, you are moving the recommendations on page 9, and there is a seconder. Any further discussion on the motion on the floor? Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is water supply update, the one we've all been waiting for. GM Rosenboom.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to share my screen with you. And there we go. So I'm
not seeing it.
You're not seeing it?
No. Is anyone else?
Yep, technical issue on my side. There. Better. This is better?
That's got her, Remco.
So I'm going to give a quick presentation on the water supply update, where we are right now, and I will also address the snowpack levels, the weather forecast, as well as some indications on where our water supply demand could go this year. So as indicated, currently we've not been able to do any snow surveys at Chapman and Edwards this year ourselves in March, in April, due to that staff would need to be in close contact to each other in a helicopter to get there and to do the actual measurements. But at the end of March, this is the snow survey results for Chapman. We were at about average, which are the dotted lines, and the picture is the same for the first was Chapman and this one was Edwards. In both cases, at the end of March or early March, we were about on average, which was good, which was hopeful, since we had pretty dry weather, and we foresee that some additional snow has accumulated, but we think we're still at about average at the moment, and we base that on data from other weather stations. So the weather station that is currently the Alpine weather station from the Coastal Hydrology and Climate Change Research Lab of the Vancouver Island University, that's broken at the moment. There's broken instrumentation, and they also have, due to COVID, issues with repairing it. So we used other weather stations in the area to come up with a prediction of where it could be in our area. So this is. Can you see my pointer as well? No. This is you see the tetrahedron weather station right almost in the middle. And the other weather stations we used for our forecasting are the other ones shown on the map. Based on working with those other the data received from those other stations, we foresee that the weather, the snow accumulation should be at about average at tetrahedron as well. The weather, last several weeks, it was cooler and drier than average, and it significantly delayed the snow melt. Currently, we have a warmer and dry spell, and we see also in creek levels that the stream flow is starting to increase. And the forecast is, from Environment Canada, is an increased likelihood of warmer than normal precipitation from June onwards. Or between now and June, and we foresee that in June it can be dry as well, and but it will all depend on the actual rain we get in June and July when we don't rely on the snow levels that much for our water supply. So the snowpack data are only an indication for when we can expect that we really have to start relying on the precipitation, and climate models for precipitation are only accurate for 1 week, 2 weeks periods in advance, and not for several months that we currently are looking at if we want to foresee want to predict the potential for precipitation in June and July and August. In the average precipitation I was talking about, that was dry. In April, usually the average of the last 10 years is about 70 millimeters and sea salt in rain, and April this year we had 3.6. So it was significantly drier. In terms of drought response plan implementation, next week the updated bylaw that allows for the hand watering for in the evenings will be presented to the board for adoption. Stage 1 will, as per the drought response plan, will be in effect as of May 1st. It's currently, due to the COVID pandemic, completely uncertain what the water demand will be here on the coast. We foresee increased water use due to hand washing. Residents will be at home all summer compared to being on vacation themselves. We already are seeing an increased occupation of second homeowners, which will further increase the water supply. There will be, of course, less tourists, but there is also an increased focus on gardening in general. That's what we are seeing all over the coast at the moment. And there is an increased focus on homegrown food, which is allowed on the most stages in the drought response plan. So will result in associated water demand as well. So it's currently for us hard to predict how the overall water demand will be, as well as what the water supply situation will be actually in the summer. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, could you unshare your screen so that I can see the question queue? Super. All right. First up is Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. A question for Remco. You're not going to be able to model summer demand usage because of COVID and everything that's going on. But do you have any idea what the usage is currently compared to this point in last year?
Higher. It's higher. It's several percent higher. I don't have the exact data with me, but I just read that in Europe the average is about 5 to 10% last month, and I can totally foresee that we have something like that here as well.
Okay, but it is in the single-digit percentage increase. Okay, thank you.
Director Lee?
I was wondering about the siphon. Are you going to be able to use it this year? Because I think we've had to do maintenance on it each year. So will we be able to do that, and will it work if we need it?
Thank you for that question. We still have to, currently there's still snow up there, and as we all know, all beach parks are closed. So we're currently seeking an exemption to the closure for us to actually go in there in May when we usually go in there. So at that point in time, we can assess what is needed on the siphon, if it's to get it back up and running again. We have a normal procedure, but we don't know if over the winter some additional damage has been done. We'll assess that in May and then repair it. And yes, we have all permits in place to operate it if needed at the stage 4 level.
Okay, I'm just going to add one quick question. Will your presentation be posted on the SCRD website?
Yes.
Okay, great. I did see another question, but it's disappeared. Director Toth.
Actually, I've got a follow-up to the comment on BC Parks being closed. So we were looking for an exemption to go in there to be able to do the work on the siphon, any repair work that needs to be done for May. Will an additional exemption be required to go in and do the actual setup of the siphon, or is it just sort of an overall exemption that we're looking for on that?
Thank you for that question. The direction from BC Parks, the indication that we received was that we need to seek one exemption for all work that is required to maintain our infrastructure there.
Thank you for that. I suppose that's an advocacy piece for our mayors and regional district chairs in their next meeting.
Okay, Director Seegers.
Thank you. I had my hand up, and then he actually answered my question because I was going to ask about the permits, etc. So he addressed that, so that's why I lowered my hand.
I did have a question. Given that, well, we have no idea, presumably, how our water usage is going to be affected by COVID if it continues through the summer. Is Gibson still on track to take Zone 3 off regional water? We know.
Honestly, no, we're still waiting on our permit from the province to bring the new well into service. So it's hinged on that. I can check and get back to you, but as far as I know, it's the permit that's hanging it up.
Jim Rosenboom?
Yeah, that's confirmed by Gibson staff, as well as they still have a lot of water main work to do, which water main installation work that could potentially be impacted as well. But that's depending on their discussion with the contractors, etc.
And of course, the other big question is how is our timeline for the Church Road AAP?
As indicated in an earlier report, the province is currently reviewing priorities for all AAPs, and they put a hold on all referenda, and they're currently reviewing the priorities for AAPs, and we are in discussions with the province on seeing if they are willing to entertain our AAP at some point this year, and we'll brief the board as soon as we hear anything about when they would be able to approve our loan authorization bylaw, and at that point in time we'll bring forward a report with a timeline for the other steps required before we can actually launch an AAP.
Okay, thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you.
Sorry, I muted you accidentally.
Anything to do with money right now, just general picture, anything to do with money right now provincially is basically in a holding pattern. So MFA, as we know, the Municipal Finance Authority, has been in touch with every one of the governments throughout the province to get an indication from them as to how much money they anticipate they're going to need to borrow to actually make it through the year. All of that is tied into government, the provincial government delaying required payments, how many of our residents and our businesses are going to be able to pay property taxes, all of those kinds of things. So the Municipal Finance Authority is looking to see how much money are they going to need to borrow to provide financing to municipalities and regional districts, which will impact our Church Road AAP, because if they don't have money, you know, and I mean, ours isn't the only one. There's probably tons of these right throughout the province where people are looking at doing AAPs for capital projects. They need to ensure that we can actually keep the operations going before we can actually start looking at AAPs for capital to ensure that they have funds to be able to provide those to us. So it's not just the process to do the AAP, because if you look at the process, we could do an AAP. People could, you know, fill out forms and send them in and whatever. That process isn't an issue. It's more the financial stuff that's going on behind the scenes. And again, it's all up in the air for a while.
Well, it's unfortunate because we had really hoped that this would be the last summer we were faced with the possibility of stage 4 water restrictions. And if the timeline for Church Road slips, then that's really not good news for the coast. Did I see any further? I had Director Toth.
Thank you. If the timeline slips any further on the Church Road, or slips on the Church Road project, I wonder if we're better off to be trying to chase down some grant money again on this particular project. And I don't know if staff can answer if there might be any possibility with COVID, maybe things are being canceled and pulled back. Just this morning, the province actually announced, just in follow up to Director Seegers, the province announced that municipalities at least are going to be able to borrow against their capital reserves for operations interest free. So the province is moving daily to try and free up resources for municipalities and regional districts, and hopefully that'll reduce the demand on MFA.
Good. Thank you. Director Lee.
So changing the subject a little bit, if that's okay. I was looking through the projects that are going on, and I see Garden Bay UV reactor there, but I don't see anything about the backup generator. Is that just because it's too small to put here, or? Anyways.
Are we still on the water supply update? Because that project, I believe that's in the Q1 report. So that's the next item on our agenda.
Oh, okay, because we did skip between the two.
Okay. Director Pratt.
Thank you. Will we have an update put on the website underneath our water projects, similar to what we were doing last year as we were going through the summer, just with where we're at right now? We're hearing a lot of questions already in the community about should I plant a garden or not? What is our water situation going to be like? I think the local weekly, their question of the week last week is the SCRD moving fast enough on water? So I think any messaging at all, even though it's earlier than what we typically put in for water conservation guidelines, is information out there is better than nothing.
Yes, information will be out there, and yes, more information than last year will be out there sooner.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. If the presentation is put up, perhaps Director Pratt and I could include some of that messaging in our videos that we're putting out to the community. You know, even something similar to, you know, some of the unknowns, right? And to include or advise people to continue to watch the website for updates going forward.
Okay. Director Crowell.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. Something that I'm finding sort of a bit alarming is you mentioned the reduction in precipitation, and that we don't really have accurate figures on the snowpack. Other figures that I've been looking at for reduced precipitation between February, March, we're averaging down 160 millimeters on average in rain, which, that's 6 inches of rain. If you think of that as snow, that's 60 inches of snow. So I would think that we should be cautious advising people, about, hey, go ahead and put in a garden, because, with the possible delay in Church Road, possible delay with the Gibson's going on to phase 3 water supply. I don't think we should be giving people false hope that they're not going to be into stage 4 water restrictions. If the weather patterns continue as they are, we're in serious trouble.
Jim, did you have any? No.
The only thing I would like to say to that is that given the early stage from where we're at, it's still mid-April, and all the uncertainty we're facing in terms of demand over the summer, and that it looks like that it might be average temperatures, but maybe also a little bit hotter. I think it's too early to really raise the alarm bells. However, I think our water supply situation in general is such that every year we should be able to expect that there might be a need to go to elevated water conservation stages.
Thank you. Next person I see is Director Hiltz.
Thanks. And my question is kind of about this the watershed data and the difference between operational data and kind of watershed management, and how important is the actual snow shed, depth from an operational point of view. It doesn't, it's once it melts, and once it rains, and is it, how useful is actually the snowpack in terms of operational? Like, I'm just wondering about this. Like, in terms of the future, having good consistent data, snowpack information, is it really operational, or is it more kind of watershed governance?
Thank you for the question. Snowpack data is a very important tool for us to inform us on the length of time that we expect that we need to rely on other water supply sources than snow. So the storage in both lakes, the Edward Lake, Chapman Lake, and Chester Well, and potentially Great Creek. Snowpack data gives us an indication on the timing that our water is stopping, that the water stops flowing over of both weirs at both lakes, which is an indication that we have to rely on the water that's still left there in the lakes. So it's really a timing issue. So a good snowpack gives us an indication that our higher likelihood that that timing will be delayed, but it all depends on, of course, the rate of snow melt. Because what we've seen last year was an average snowpack, but a really early or below average snowpack and a really early snow melt. Year before was a good snowpack, above average, but a quick melt. So it's all related. So snowpack itself does not give us any indication of what the water supply situation will be over the summer. It's one piece of the puzzle, but a very important one.
Thank you very much. I don't see anybody else with hands raised. So given that there are no motions arising from this, I think we could, Director Lee?
I will ask my question in a different way. I noticed that the generator for the Garden Bay plant is not on here. My assumption then is that it's not started yet in Q1. Would that be correct?
Director Lee, we haven't moved on to that report yet. We're about to do so.
Which report are we considering then?
We are on the water supply update. And we are now about to move to Annex D, the Infrastructure Services Department Q1 report. Do you have any further introduction to that, GM Rosenboom?
This report just provides an overview of the activities we've done over Q1 so far, and in anticipation of a question from Director Lee, some projects that have not been started yet because they were just approved might not have made the report yet in terms of a progress update.
Thank you very much. I have a question about the cemetery reservoir on page 35. That reservoir is accessed from Keith Road, the upper section of which I understand is supposed to be maintained by Modi, but hasn't been maintained the last couple of years following some washouts. And I understood that our crews have been accessing that reservoir via a private road that's in the mobile home park that is known as Boot Hill. What is our situation with that road? Because, you know, if we are maintaining public infrastructure, we should have public road access to it.
Thank you for the question, Chair. Since our last conversation on this project during budget deliberations, we've had conversations with MOTI staff, and we're working towards a collaboration on how to upgrade the road and implement the project to ensure that not all costs are borne by the SRD.
Good, thank you. Do we have any more questions? Aha, Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I actually got a couple of questions. On the reservoir topic, cemetery reservoir, looking on the GIS, it looks like the reservoir is actually on the private property of Boot Hill, you know, just looking at it this morning, just looking at it. So my question on the cemetery, is that a secure site in terms of ownership? If the infrastructure is on private property, access to that property through the private property versus the public road? So that's the reservoir question. And as I gave GM Rosenboom some warning, you know, it's my duty to ask about the YMCA Langdale wastewater ongoing topic, and you know, people are anxious about that, and so that's my duty to ask that question, I feel. So just you know, so the two questions.
I'll answer the first one first and then do the second one. I will confirm the property status and if there might be an statutory right of way we have for the reservoir, because I'm not aware of the fact that it might be on private property, but I will confirm. Second question, thanks for fulfilling your duty. There was a meeting scheduled between us and YMCA staff that had to be postponed, and is currently, due to COVID, priorities on both sides, and we're currently in the planning of rescheduling it to make it virtual in upcoming weeks. But on that note, last year we confirmed that there is different issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Ties.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just asking if we've seen any COVID-related impacts on both landfill volume and green waste. I hear anecdotally that they've both been up, but I'm also wondering, maybe commercial garbage is down, or at least construction garbage is down. So just wondering if there's any anecdotal evidence there, or any real evidence, I guess, not anecdotal.
I have some real evidence. Yesterday I got the data for green waste hold to all three sites, and the March data was missing when this report was published. And on average, first quarter this year, we're 30% over the average for the last 3 years, which is significantly over, especially March. February was already higher than last year, but March just went through the roof. So we were and that's all three sites. It's not one site specific. In terms of overall landfill, I had staff pull some data over last weekend in terms of number of visits to the landfill as well as Bender Station. Bender Station landfill has been extremely busy for the last 3-4 weeks since, and it's still busy, but over the Easter days it was less busy than it was last year. I think a lot of people already brought their garbage earlier, which was in a way a good sign. However, Bender, that's where we really saw a spike last week and the week prior. We think it's primarily people with secondary residences going up there and cleaning and staying there for longer. Over the Easter weekend, it was about 10% more than last year in terms of traffic volumes we're having here, which required us to bring in more staff to do the traffic management to ensure that physical distancing was adhered to at all times at the transfer station itself, and not having too many people all at the same time in the yard. In terms of commercial traffic, commercial volumes, it's actually interesting. I was expecting that it would go down, but it's staying equal. So currently, based on data from the last 6 weeks, we haven't seen any change in volumes we're getting from commercial, and commercial in this case includes medical facilities. So there might be some offsets there from a reduction in restaurants, with maybe an increase in garbage receipts from grocery stores, but maybe also the medical facilities on the coast. And just to be clear, for medical facilities, it's only the general waste that's going to the landfill and nothing related to biomedical waste.
Thank you. Very interesting. Director Seegers.
Thank you. I know you've said that volumes at our green waste disposal sites is up. And yesterday, a fire started in Squamish because of the dry conditions. I wonder if it would be a good opportunity to encourage our community, since they're home, to consider fire smarting their properties. I know that would increase the green waste yet again, but given that people are working on their properties, I know that our fire departments could potentially get that information out. People have the opportunity now. It might be something we could look to take advantage of. Because if we're going to have a dry summer and not a lot of water, and people have the time now, it's a good idea to potentially move that forward.
Thank you for the suggestion, and we'll definitely discuss that with our fire chiefs. In terms of the addition of green waste, it's operationally, it has resulted in some issues at the South Coast side, currently operated by the town of Gibsons, because the volumes were exceeding our capacity to actually empty the bins, and town of Gibsons needed to ensure that there was enough staff available to actually operate the site. So it has been closed every now and then for a couple of hours. but I think last several weeks there was less hiccups there than there used to be in the first couple of weeks of COVID.
Thank you. I know that Elphinstone is contributing to this because the folks across the street and people behind me are both trimming their hedges, and there's lots of volume coming from that. I would just like to follow up the COVID topic with asking if there has been any impact on the recycling, and also whether it's had any impact on our leak detection program.
Thank you for both questions. In terms of leak detection program, there's no impact to that at all. We can continue to do what we're usually doing. We're sending out letters, we're following up, and if need, we do site visits and maintain physical distancing at all times there. In terms of recycling, the depots, all three depot operators have implemented their own measures to ensure that physical distancing is adhered to, and they're still open and accepting most of the materials. There are some limitations on materials on some of the facilities, but they are minor. All major materials for which we have a contract under with Recycle BC are still accepted.
And no significantly larger or smaller volume at this point?
No.
Director Lee?
Yes, back to the solid waste. It's around this time of the year we issue coupons for, I guess, strictly for probably spring cleanup. And I think a lot of people have started their spring cleanup quite early because of the fact they're home. Is it still a good idea to issue those coupons and encourage people to do even more into our landfill?
That's a very timely question. The coupons will be printed today, or will go to print today, and even if there would be desire, we had a discussion yesterday, and we're trying to see if we can adjust the start date of the coupon program this year to the week to a couple of days after Labor Day, to reduce the current amount of traffic to the landfill, and that's in line with what we see other local governments doing. But we have to see if we can make that happen given the timing of the coupons being sent to print.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions in the queue. Aha, Director Toth.
It's actually just a follow-up on the coupon program because the District of Seashelt manages its coupon program directly, and they're printed onto the tax notices. Have you forwarded that information on to our staff? Because there might be some synergies to delay our coupon program as well.
Once we've confirmed that we can delay it, we will definitely connect with Town of Gibson and District Seashelt staff as well.
Thank you very much. I do not see any further questions in the queue. The next item is communications. We have a letter from the Honorable George Heyman regarding asbestos. Does anybody wish to speak to the letter? Director Seegers?
I'll move receipt. I don't think we did receipt at the beginning. We did the reports.
We didn't. Second, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. We have received the letter. Anything further about disposal of asbestos? Director Seegers?
Yes, I'd like GM Rosenboom actually to explain what he's saying in there. Because he's saying we can consider seeking authorization to dispose of asbestos waste in municipal landfills under the provisions. So what does that actually mean for us?
I can try to do my best to explain it. What I think that they're assuming here is that we have a lined landfill. Most landfills that have a liner in them have the authority to have the opportunity to bury asbestos contaminating landfill at our landfills, drywall at our landfills. Because we don't have a liner underneath, us doing so would result in contamination of groundwater with asbestos, and that's why we're not allowed to do it.
I'm just going to follow up that question. I'm guessing that a lot of landfills in rural communities do not have liners. Would that be a reasonable assumption?
Yes, and it very, very much depends on the date that the landfill was initiated. Ours is dating back to the late 60s, so that's one of the reasons why in our case it's
So I guess that raises the question of whether we want to follow up that letter by pointing out that their suggested solution is in fact no solution for most of the small rural communities. Any thoughts, anyone? Director Hiltz.
Yeah, I guess this is it's directed to the board. So staff are following up with this opportunity that is presented to us, or is it? I'm just wondering about the process of, do we need to authorize you to go back, or is this just strictly an administrative staff process piece?
Jim?
If desired by the board, I'm more than happy to follow up with the staff member to explore the topic further, explain the situation, and if I see any opportunities for further advocacy work, I will report back to the board on this issue.
That would be awesome. I assume you don't need a motion for that?
Nope, thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. All right. We appear to have reached the end of our regular agenda here. We will be going in camera. Before we go in camera, I think we should we'll need a motion to go in camera, then we'll do public questions, and then we will take a 10-minute break. So I would like a motion to go in camera that the public be excluded from attendance at the meeting in accordance with Section 91K of the Community Charter, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of municipal services that are at their preliminary stages, and that, in the view of the council, could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. I see a motion. I see a seconder. All in favor? Thank you very much. Do we have any questions in the gallery?
We had no one in the gallery. Someone has just connected, but I think they're a bit late. I see no questions.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, it is now 10:59. We're going to resume at 11:10. Thanks very much, everyone. Thank you. We have an amended motion to go in camera. Could I have somebody make the motion that we will go in camera under section 90, subsection 1, subsection C of the community charter? I see the motion. I see it seconded. All in favor,
No.
please?
Sorry, question. Is that in addition to the one that was on before? Yes.
In addition to the one
Thank
that was
you.
previously on the floor. Thank
Thank
you. Okay, all in favor? Thank you very much. We will now go in camera. Okay, we are finishing off our regular Infrastructure Services Committee agenda. Can I see a motion to adjourn? Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. We are adjourned. Now, can we go offline?